thank you for joining us and welcome to Guest for Change. My name is Michaela and I'm Head of Sustainability for the Guestlist. Today we will be bridging the gap between generations as we discuss some of the ins and outs of the textile industry from a young woman's perspective. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Annabelle Hutter, founder of Born on Saturday and product director of Säntis Textiles. As a child of globalization, you mentioned something about waste previously. So as a child of globalization, what is your opinion on global waste? Are we handling it effectively?
I have gone through a whole journey of discovery when it comes to global waste management, and hence why I even mentioned it before, because it's the one thing that I think about when I go to bed and when I wake up. It's like, how is the world handling all the waste that's, everywhere? Because they are not doing enough. And that I really think comes down to legislation. I don't think governments are actually handling the subject properly. In the US, there is no actual system for collection and recycling. So a lot of people there who want to recycle waste in America, because there's so much textile waste in America and in North America especially. A lot of people are finding themselves stuck because there are no collection points, there are no sorting systems, there's just no system put in place to be able to help people to manage their waste correctly. And I'm not saying that this is just in the US, it happens everywhere. And every client that I deal with specifically, I see so many disparities in legislation that is just in turn not doing anything for global waste management. I think that a lot of countries are not doing enough in terms of setting up systems for the waste that is already there. For example, in Asia, that's another story, but in Asia, we actually have a problem where it's privatized. So waste is actually not even a public, it's not even a public resource. It's a private resource, and people are actually making money off of collecting people's trash. And then therefore they don't want to set up systems because it's just all okay as it is, as long as they're making profits, right? So I think this is really a problem. Just the way that globalization is celebrated, it's great, it's amazing. But then when it comes to an effort to regulate waste between countries or within one country, it's just not there yet. It hasn't really bloomed.
I guess I just want to know, how does air pollution come into play exactly within the textiles industry impact? In your opinion, is there enough of a priority to decrease that too?
Speaking from my experience, the facility where my bags are made in Turkey, they focus on regenerative power. So they have built their own power plant and energy source on the facility site, where they basically are generating their own hydropower, which is really incredible. So they noticed from their textile background that they had generated so much air pollution, and they admitted it. And in order to change that, they have literally built their own renewable energy source. So I think air pollution is a huge problem in the textiles industry from A to Z. It's a problem, and there are facilities out there. There are companies and brands that are taking that question and providing solutions to it. So it's a very tricky field to be in, but I think if more companies and more textile facilities had, for example, renewable energy sources on site, this could really help to decrease the air pollution that is generated by textiles.
It'd be amazing if companies had the capabilities to do that further. So I just want to dive into this one because this is specifically targeted towards you and our younger audience. So the Guestlist advocates for bridging the gap between generations. And when we last spoke, you brought up the notion of there as being a generational shift taking place as we are given more freedom to be creative and challenge the status quo. So what do you believe are the most effective ways that the youth of today can change the narrative?
It's a whole dialogue internally in my head every time. I mean, I think because I'm active in this every day, you know, I send an email out, and it's another way to push so many people forward in understanding and really getting involved in circularity. So I feel like, you know, those small steps are actually really big in the whole spectrum of things. But I think as a younger generation, it's just not being afraid to engage in that dialogue directly. Don't be afraid to be that person, you know. Don't be afraid to call out, you know, one of your friends or something that's buying fast fashion all the time. Don't be afraid to call them out and you know, teach them. Just be that person, you know. I mean, sometimes you can be called the angry feminist or angry woman, or, you know, the difficult person, but you're not being difficult, because you're planting a seed in someone's head, and you're really opening that door for them, and they might think twice. They maybe won't even think about it, but it's really important. And I think our generation is really good at that. You know, embrace that you're young, and you're more entitled to share this opinion and challenge the status quo than our elders, because we're going to be living in the planet in 50, 60, 70 years. But our elders, I mean, they're at a point where, you know, they care, but they don't really feel the strain of it like we do. So don't be afraid to be that person. That's all I have to say. I mean, most people would say, oh, Annabelle is that person for sure. But just, I take a lot of pride in it, in believing what I believe and having my opinions and sharing it. I think it's really important. And I think
100% be that person. You do need to call people out, because it is a matter of planting that seed. And this is what Guest for Change is trying to do. We want to plant that seed and start the conversations to bring proactive change. So are there any specific roles within the fashion industry that you would say need more younger people, or specifically women, involved in?
I can say that in my domain, I mean, as a fabric director, I think when it comes to technical and engineering, definitely a lot more women have to be involved. Women are often in the textile industry, they're either in sales or marketing, but they're not actually, you know, pushing technology. So I think women can really be a pinnacle in that. I guess younger women, I'm saying. I know a lot of older women who are already in it, but I think from a young person speaking to young people, definitely we need more people who are interested in that. It's not really a popular subject among us young women, so definitely, you know, shout out to everyone who's interested, get involved. Yeah, I think that women can be involved in any aspect. I don't think it's limited to one, and I hope to see more.
I love that. Yeah, literally praising you in the background. And amazing. Yeah. We're coming to our last question, our last juicy question. What questions do you wish people would be asking you more often?
What I wish people would ask me is the just how does it all happen, you know, and where does it all go from here? How does the concept of recycled cotton, how is it going to help our planet? How is it going to help mankind? How is it going to help the future generations? I also wish they would ask me what the end goal is. You know, I would say the end goal for me and my family company especially is to branch away from recycled cotton and recycle many more fabrics and textile waste that's out there that is currently not recyclable. That's next steps. I mean, that's something that we're developing, but it's a slow process. And I also kind of wish that a lot more women ask me about, you know, the role of colonialism, I guess, and like the patriarchy when it comes to the textile industry, because I think that's, you know, really had an influence on consumer habits and the way that we've been educated, and how we approach textiles and fabrics and products in general? I think that's a really important question that not enough people are asking. You know, it ties in a lot with what I'm doing.
Well, now based on all of the questions that you've asked, I want to ask you a question. What exactly did you mean by waste as a colonial concept?
I mean, I'm an art history major by training. So I have read a lot about or studied a lot about, you know, colonies and colonization. You know, part of my thesis was on Spain and them going over to South America and colonizing South America for all the goods that they had. So I think waste has become a colonial construct because we, way back when, I can't tell you when, but a lot of cotton comes from all these different countries, which were some of which had been colonized, and cotton, for example, had been exploited as a colonial element. We have been taught through generations that waste is a bad thing. Waste is not a good word. Waste isn't a friendly word. It makes you feel disgusted, you know? And that really has trickled down from colonization, where those people that colonized those countries had decided what goes and what doesn't go. And one of those things was, and this was purely for profit reasons. So really that ideology has trickled down into the way that we handle waste nowadays. It has effectively been, again, a male-dominated subject. Who decides what goes and who decides what doesn't? And it has a lot to do with poorer countries and exploitation, just like colonization. It's a huge topic, but it is a colonial construct in the sense that we're just disgusted by it because that's what we've been taught. And that's something that has been taught through the times. So I hope it changes. Hopefully me sitting here talking about it is going to change things.
Like just that explanation in itself is just golden. It's just something that people need to understand more. There's just so much more that goes into it. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with a philosopher called Rob Nixon. If you haven't, you need to read one of his articles and his thesis. Well, I did my thesis on it, and he basically speaks about how we need to change our understanding of violence, because then that also is association with waste. Waste actually brings into violence. And yes, you're saying it's not a negative thing because so many things can happen to it, but at the same time, people are attracted to this fast impacting notion of violence. But if we start changing the definitions of things, then perhaps our way of thinking changes, and we no longer want to do out of sight, out of mind, the waste is gone kind of thing, where it's a continuous circular thing where we're literally bringing it back into our system and working with it. So yeah, honestly, like I could speak to you about this for hours. So
it's a really in-depth conversation to have, and it's just, yeah, it's basically people throughout the times have said what goes and what doesn't go, and therefore we just are disgusted by waste. It's wrong. But it's also 2021, so people are calling this out, and it should be called out. So that's why I'm calling it out in the textiles industry.
Annabelle, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge and experiences. I mean, there is so much intersectionality within the fashion industry, so it was just absolutely fascinating to get your insight from someone who is literally living as part of the change that needs to happen. For our audience, we'll pop all the links needed below. Give this video a like, pop in any questions that you have for Annabelle or any comments below, and subscribe to get notified for our next Guest for Change.